Welcome to Prepared for Parenthood, the podcast for hopeful, expectant, and new parents with little ones up to age 5. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Dueger, a psychotherapist, author, educator, parent coach, and married mother of 2. On this show, we'll discuss everything from the most up-to-date practicals of best supporting your young children, to thriving in relationship as a family, to more surprising topics around the psychology and development of babies from conception through age 5. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm thrilled to have you here today. Welcome back to Prepared for Parenthood. Our guest today is Kate White, an award-winning educator and advanced bodyworker located in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Kate is trained in somatic therapies, including somatic experiencing and biodynamic craniosacral work, prenatal and perinatal somatic health, lactation, brain development, and infant mental health, and has specialized in parent-baby dyad care using somatic prevention and trauma healing approaches for 26 years. Kate's the founding director of education for APA, where between 2013 and 2019, she created and ran the Prenatal and Perinatal Educator Certificate Program. She went on to found Prenatal and Perinatal Healing Online and the Prenatal and Perinatal Somatics Institute. Kate is also the mother of 2. We're so happy to have you here today, Kate. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Stephanie.
Can you share a little bit about what prenatal and perinatal somatics actually is?
I would love to. Pre and perinatal somatics is the study of what happens for us in the earliest layers of experience. The preconception, then conception, prenatal, birth, and afterbirth. It's a profoundly pre-verbal time. For a long time, it was pre and perinatal psychology, and maybe it still is for some folks. Some people may call it birth psychology, but it's really not psychology. It's a pre-cognitive memory that's in our bodies because our cognitive aspect of our brain was not online at that time. So it's all recorded in our bodies. So pre and perinatal somatics is that study of the baby's experience starting preconception up to about 2 years of age. And we were able to look at it in terms of the layers of experience. And if there are overwhelming events during that time, they can be recorded in our bodies. And if not addressed, they can stay alive in our bodies and influence how we feel or think or perceive the world. So it's a study of that and how to improve it, basically.
I know people often have questions about how can we remember things that we aren't storing cognitively. Can you share a little bit about what you understand to be the lived body experience of how we store these memories and experiences, if not within our cognitive brain?
They're stored in our bodies. So it's an implicit memory. It's a procedural memory. Your muscles remember it. Also our nervous system. The autonomic nervous system actually begins in the 3rd week in utero with Schwann cell development. And the autonomic nervous system is fully developed by the time the baby is born. Our bodies will register, even on a cellular level, some of the things that happen. It depends on who you read about where memory is stored. We used to think it's only in the brain and in the hippocampus, but we know now it's stored in the nervous system and it's also stored in our cells. So overwhelming events that happen in our lives are stored in the nucleus of neurons and in neural nets that fire automatically when sensations remind the body of the overwhelming events that we've been through. Birth is one of those really amazingly physical inside to outside events, from being an inside baby to the outside baby. It's one of the biggest things that ever happens to us. And of course, it's registered in our bodies. But there are lots of other things that are registered besides birth. Our prenatal dynamics and sometimes even our ancestral experiences are here. But the basic way we remember is it's an implicit memory stored in the muscles and the nervous system and the cells of our bodies.
So when I think of a human body, I think of a lot of cells, millions, billions of cells in our body. So when you're working with someone on that somatic level, How do we process some of those experiences when it potentially is stored throughout your entire body?
The practitioner ideally is trained to recognize the pattern. And the training to become a pre and perinatal professional is fairly rigorous. It takes a long time. And you can recognize the things that arise in people based on the trainings that are offered. So as practitioner, you recognize what's happening and then you name it, and then you can use a variety of facilitation skills. I have 5 categories of skills that I teach. And we also use touch. Touch and gesture and posture and sensation are all the language of the baby. And so we're able to help repattern the overwhelming events, explain to the person they have cognition. It's not just for adults. That's how we learned a lot of this, but it's for families with children. And then babies will be right there. They'll tell you right away the things that went on for them. But we use a variety of skills. I use the autonomic nervous system states to recognize overwhelming events. So it's a stress or threat response that's in the autonomic nervous system. By and large, I can recognize what layer is active for the person and help them acknowledge that it happened and that it was in the past, not in the present. And then I facilitate change and integration using the skills that I know and I teach.
So I work a lot with parents who've had traumatic births and their babies, and we use somatic pieces around that. Can you share how you might navigate a traumatic birth with, say, a mom and a baby?
Sure. I'd like to hear how you do it too, Stephanie. The first thing I do is I acknowledge that it happened. In a birthing timeline, there could be overwhelming events in a variety of places. So it's not just one overwhelming event. Usually there's several. It's a timeline. I work with recognizing the places where if a family comes to me, I ask them where they're still working with the memory. If they're haunted a little bit or even a lot by what happened. I like to listen to the story, acknowledge the challenges, affirm that they made it through this difficult time. And then we start working with the memories of it. And as we work with the feeling in their body, it begins to integrate. So it's a somatic experiencing type of pendulation or going toward what was challenging and moving away from what was challenging in the sensations of the body. The body is made to heal this way. So we just have to get the actual physiology working in that direction. And often when we do that, the memory recedes and gets integrated. I often will start with strengths, things that really help them in the birthing story. Could be that one nurse. Usually there is a one nurse that really meant a lot to them, or sometimes it's one of the other providers, could have been their partner. There's a variety of places in the birthing story that I can enter into, or even at the completion, to help them find places in the timeline that felt good or that felt supportive. And from those places, we'll go to what's more challenging, and then we'll just go back and forth a little using sensation, and it helps the actual memory of that's connected in the body to the overwhelming events integrate.
And say a mom brings in a little infant. Do you work with the mom and baby together? Do you work with the mama first or baby first or mom working with baby? How does that look in your practice?
Well, it really depends. I have a lot of physical skills, manual therapy skills, and so it really helps to work with the baby. And often it's the baby that parents will bring first. Please help me. And I teach 3 types of trauma with the babies. Usually it's crying trauma, sleeping trauma, or feeding trauma. I see a lot of breastfeeding trauma, babies that won't breastfeed, babies that are inconsolable and crying, or babies that have a hard time sleeping. And so that's often how the parent comes in with the baby. So usually I'll work with the baby first, and then I'll ask the parent more about what happened. So then I'll explain if I work with them, their baby will also receive it. So I work with parents all over the world now. That work is primarily with the birthing parent. They are haunted by what happened. And I've even had parents come in that are in their 70s that are still haunted by their birth. I work with them to acknowledge what happened and help them make sense of it. Sometimes I meet with my midwife partner. It's often wonderful to have her there because she's had 50 years experience in many birth settings and can explain a lot of the things that happen. The hospitals are not really good at explaining to parents what happened. Some are, some do, but they get home and they're very confused and they're hurt. And so it's nice to have my midwife partner there, Lois, who explains things. And sometimes even that is enough to settle somebody who's had birth trauma.
And do you find that the majority of parents who come in with a newborn or young infant, that it's often birth trauma? What percent would you say is a traumatic birthing or postpartum event?
98%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Sometimes it's really a tongue tie that is the breastfeeding trauma. But often with tongue tie comes some kind of myofascial constraint. And sometimes if I just do the body work, the tongue tie resolves enough. If it's a marginal tongue tie, the parents are confused and then they feel like a bad parent. I mean, that's the biggest thing, Stephanie, is parents, their natural way to respond to all these overwhelming things is it's my fault or I'm bad or I'm wrong or I did something wrong. So my work is really about restoring parents and families to themselves. I find that I can help a family feel better in just like 3 sessions. And then if they feel connected, they understand, and they go on to thrive. The birthing parent doesn't have to carry the story forever or their partner or the baby.
I just want to say that's such a gift, right? Because I see people across the spectrum as a psychotherapist. And so some of my clients who come in their 60s or 70s and they've been dealing with these things all their lives. And to be able to help families and little ones right at the beginning, what a gift. And then you don't have to be coming in to see someone like me when you're in your 70s. The
Oh,
child gets to grow up in this beautiful way with hopefully minimal experiences of trauma after potentially a hard birth or postpartum experience.
I wish that I had somebody like that when I was born and my mom had somebody like that. And then it would be such a better world altogether. And then young people would grow and not have to feel like something's wrong with them, because that's another thing that babies will take on. The
Mm.
parent thinks it, they think it, and then there are all these adaptation patterns that arise. Then at the age of 28 or 32 or 50, they come in to see you and say, help me.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times they're bringing in a sense of shame, right? That
Yeah,
something is wrong with me. I've been hearing this my whole life or experiencing this my whole life that I didn't do it right. Something's wrong with me.
right.
Right. And then the shame pattern can be tricky to unwind. But if you get it very early, like you said, it can be just a few sessions before you're helping a baby and a new family off on a much better foot than they had started out on.
Yeah. And then I like to teach parents skills like how to recognize when their baby's telling the story, and also touch skills like baby massage and little squeezes that are good for shock, and recognizing when their baby is in certain autonomic nervous system states. And what does that look like on a baby or even in a child or even in an adult? And be able to have skills of presence to help be with those difficult states. So parenting, I teach that a little bit in my training with attachment, but really helping parents, I think that's a huge, wonderful gift to have a parent, and something that you do with your book and your podcast, Stephanie.
I know that you have so many skills. You've taken a lifetime to develop many, many skills in your work. Can you share your process of getting into this work and what that's looked like and maybe the most important things that you've focused on to help build those skills and be able to help families and little ones?
That's a really big question. Well, I started off, I just fell in love with this field of practice in 1999 when I had a client remember her birth on my table. I was a craniosacral therapist. I was brand new to it at the time, and I had just had my first baby, who's now 26. I had a long intake form that said, "Tell me about your birth" on it. It was before I knew about birth psychology or anything like that, like before I even learned about APA. And this woman just said, "Yeah, my birth was really difficult, and I think that it's the reason why I have lifelong depression, and I want to heal it. and I want to heal it with you. And of course, I'm like, okay, sure. I mean, I didn't know anything about it. And she was in her late 50s, I think. And so she had had a breech birth. I had found out I had a breech birth also because her pattern of nearly dying at birth triggered me. I had started having panic attacks while I was working on her, and all I was doing was just holding her body. Craniosacral therapy is one of those skills I would highly recommend if you want to work with your hands with people that have trauma. It's a beautiful restorative therapy. All these intense memories of being born are very compressive and they're in your body. So you can reorient those with your hands. So I was doing that. And I started having the panic attacks, and I called up William Emerson, who was the only guy I knew at the time, who told me, look, if you're getting people that are asking for this birth memory work, you should be trained. So I did. I said I started with William and I went on to a study with Carlton Terry. And then I studied with Myrna Martin and Ray Castellino, and then Anna Chitty and John Chitty and Jaap van der Wal. And these are all names of people that work with trauma and work with earliest experiences. And William is one of our grandfathers of all the work. I learned a lot. I really fell in love with that. So it's like understanding the baby's experience. And it's right next to our greatest sort of spiritual essences of who we really are. And so by integrating these early traumas, you can allow the more essential qualities of our humanness to rise. So I would say the most important skills are skills of presence. You have to learn how to be with these highly charged autonomic states, because being born, birth trauma often includes survival states or near-death state, variations of terror and horror. But there are also really ecstatic states that are in there, and empowerment and the beauty of human connection. And I mean, there's so much beauty also. But you have to really have a skill of presence, of being able to be with. My approach is to not have a fixed approach. Like I say, it's restorative. So I don't think it's a psychological approach I have, Stephanie. It's much more of a broad approach with inquiry. There's lots of skills of inquiry. And so your curiosity and your presence is really the basic skills. But I have taken an embarrassing amount of training programs. And I've learned I have my favorites. I think studying somatic inquiry, no matter what it is really fabulous. So I studied with Anna Chitty and somatic experiencing, but focusing is also really excellent. Or any of the somatic, we have a variety to choose from now. Just the use of sensation in your body and understanding how the body speaks and tells its story, and helping your person integrate and be curious about what happens in their bodies, bringing them into relationship with their bodies. And if you can do the craniosacral therapy or a form of touch therapy, that will really help. So I do the biodynamic craniosacral therapy and polarity therapy. And then I have a bodywork sequence I've developed that goes with the work that I do. So the basic skills of presence, somatic inquiry, relational feel, and being able to recognize what's happening in the person in front of you.
And then in your trainings, Kate, you walk people through this experience that's for professionals working with this particular population. Do you teach some of those touch skills, or is that separate from what you do?
Well, I teach the stabilization work, the body work. It's good if you have a license to touch already. If you're a nurse or a midwife or a somatic therapist that has a license to touch. So I teach a bodywork approach. But I do not teach biodynamic craniosacral therapy. That is a 10-module program, and it's very intense, and it takes a long time to learn. And the more to be a good teacher of it, I would really think that that would be a great thing to know if you're going to work with babies. So,
And for our families listening, what are some gifts that you can give them in terms of, okay, maybe you've had a difficult birth experience or your baby's feeling challenged right now with feeding or sleeping or something. Are there things that parents might be able to do at home if they're waiting to see someone with these kinds of skills for support?
Yeah, I think being able to recognize that your baby is trying to tell you something. I have an ebook that's free. There's a little video in there as how the baby tells the story. And then just presence with your baby. I mean, there's this little book, Calms, CALMS, which is about how to be with your baby. And it's allowing yourself to slow down and listen and then mirror back to your baby what you feel like they're trying to tell you. I would definitely want to recommend that your nervous system be attended to. If you're a parent, get body work or have somebody with you. If you have a little baby that's crying a lot, you need some support. So our first task usually when working with parents is to ask them who is their support. And that's one thing we don't do very well in our country is support families with little babies and small children. So really helping parents know that they're the most important person to their baby and that their autonomic nervous system is important. John Chitty used to say that the baby is a hitchhiker on the mother's nervous system. And it's true. And so having another person, at least, if not two, that can help you if you're a new parent and you're having a challenge, I would say really helping your nervous system. And then I would do some body work or stretching with your baby. Often the baby's posture will tell you the story, but just touching, squeezing, putting the baby on you, skin to skin, getting support for yourself, getting out, like just going to the grocery store by yourself for an hour is a really good if you need some time to yourself and getting those layers of support. And sometimes I will advocate for sleep for the parent if they're at their wits' end. And this has been going on for a couple of weeks and they haven't been sleeping. I'll advocate for at least 5 hours of sleep for one night. So all hands on deck, help with the baby mom sleeps.
That sleep piece is so critical, right?
Right.
And the pacing at which we move. We live in such a fast-paced society
Mm,
here in the US, and I know many people around the world as well, but slowing down to that
yeah.
baby's pace when you're a new parent can be hard. It can be hard to shift gears if you're not with your baby all the time, or it can feel stressful to shift from that higher paced experience into that very slow experience of being with a baby. I know that's challenging for a lot of people. So that sleep can really be critical. The rest and digest experience of your parasympathetic nervous system really needs to be encouraged and coaxed sometimes
Totally.
to be in a space where you can stay with a baby and be present when they're dysregulated. You
That's
know,
very hard to do.
it is very hard to do.
Uh,
There's a reason it's hard to do, right? Because the baby's telling you something when they're crying. And so our innate response is to do something to
Yes,
help fix it. That's how our babies stay alive. So it is very hard to just stay present and try to regulate your own nervous system when a baby is crying, when your baby is crying, especially.
really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we allow a breath, allow yourself a couple of breaths, listen, mirror back, and I hear you're frustrated and angry. I'm frustrated and angry too. I mean, the tools that we can give parents are a lot about slowing down in their bodies and having that presence and the support. Yeah.
And they're such important tools for your whole life, right? So, your whole life as a parent, we're talking specifically about infants here, but that little one is really living off your nervous system
Mm,
for many, many years. I would argue for their entire young life until they start individuating, which is not for a long time. And so, we deeply impact the experience of our entire family by how well we can regulate. So I'm always trying to encourage people to really find some practices that just help support your own nervous system to stay present and as calm and regulated as you can so that we
It's a
can
hard job
really
parenting.
support.
Yeah.
Very hard. Yeah. We've been speaking today with Kate White, an award winning educator and advanced body worker. She does lots of different trainings and works with parents and babies and little ones. Thank you so much for being here today, Kate. It's really nice to see you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
You bet. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Prepared for Parenthood podcast today. I hope you found this episode educational, informational, and conversational, and that you'll join me again for another episode soon. If you enjoyed listening to today's podcast, I'd very much appreciate if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you're interested in more information related to today's podcast, or are looking for parent coaching or courses, you can find my information in the show notes or online at preparedforparenthood.com.